It's fun to imagine what the world was like around the time we each entered it. We were too young to remember anything, but thanks to a detailed history of TV ratings, we know exactly which shows our parents were bummed about missing because they were too busy giving birth to us, or too tired from taking care of us. And they didn't have Hulu or Netflix to use for catch-up purposes. Yeah, our parents were pretty much savages. But what were they watching on TV? 1972 to 1976, All in the Family. The social upheaval of the late 60s gave way to more social upheaval in the 70s, and lots of families' family time suddenly consisted of parents arguing with their liberal offspring about various hot-button topics. All in the Family appealed to both sides. Most of the action centered around Carol O'Connor's Archie Bunker, a gruff but unexpectedly lovable bigot who butted heads with his hippie daughter and her husband, while wife Edith tried to keep the peace. All in the Family was one part sitcom, one part public affairs discussion, one part moving drama, and it so resonated with Americans that it stayed atop the ratings all the way into the disco era. 1977, Happy Days. Americans in the mid-70s came down with a bad case of nostalgia for the late 50s and early 60s. Enter Happy Days, a throwback about the wholesome Cunningham family. The Andy Griffith Show's child star and future Oscar-winning director Ron Howard played wide-eyed high schooler Richie Cunningham, who hung out at Arnold's Diner with friends like Arthur Fonzie Fonzarelli, who was quite possibly the coolest character on television. He wore a leather jacket, rode a motorcycle, could make a jukebox play by hitting it, and summoned young girls with a snap of his fingers. They were different times. 1978 to 1979, Laverne and Shirley. A rare example of a spin-off doing as well as the show it was spun off from, Laverne and Shirley were first introduced in an episode of Happy Days, then got their own sitcom. Penny Marshall's Laverne was edgy. Cindy Williams' Shirley was a bit more optimistic. They were roommates, best friends, and co-workers at the Schatz Brewery in the late 50s and early 60s. Bubbling with energy, Laverne and Shirley balanced their time at the bottling plant while hanging out at Laverne's father's restaurant and fending off the advances of their nerdy and obnoxious friends. 1980, 1983, 1992 to 1994, 60 Minutes. 60 Minutes has been a part of the CBS lineup since 1968, and the show's in-depth reporting made it a pioneer in TV news.
It's produced a few moments of world-changing journalism, such as Mike Wallace's 1996 story about tobacco industry whistleblower Jeffrey Wigand.
But perhaps 60 Minutes' most famous segment has been the show-ending palate cleanser, A Few Minutes with Andy Rooney, in which the veteran humorously complained about whatever he felt like.
But not sleeping is not my problem. Justin Bieber, Lady Gaga, and Usher. I mean, who? When did bright-colored plastic cows, pigs, and rabbits get to be art? I don't like most of the stuff passing for art, and it's everywhere.
1981, 1982, and 1984, Dallas. Primetime soaps were the biggest TV fad in the late 70s and early 80s, and the biggest of them all was Dallas. It centered around the Ewing family and their massive Texas-based oil company, headed by Larry Hagman's downright evil J.R. Ewing. It also produced one of the most watched TV events ever, the two-part Who Shot J.R. cliffhanger that got people tuning in the following season. 1985, Dynasty. By 1985, the popularity of Dallas had diminished, but audiences still wanted to see rich people behaving badly on primetime television. ABC happily obliged with Dynasty, starring John Forsythe as Tycoon Blake Carrington. Add in a much younger secretary-turned-wife, as well as Joan Collins as Blake's ex-wife Alexis, and the show discovered exactly what people wanted to see. Alexis and her new rival getting into arguments, then slapping each other while wearing extremely expensive clothes. 1986 to 1990, The Cosby Show. With the recent allegations against Bill Cosby, it's easy to forget his show was once so well loved. Debuting on NBC in 1984 when the popularity of sitcoms was fading, The Cosby Show was crafted to be a groundbreaking portrayal of a black family, something that was rarely seen on TV. The Cosby Show often played fast and loose with sitcom standards, and in doing so, changed viewers' expectations. Some episodes tackled heavy subject matter, while others had almost no plot at all, and just featured the family hanging out and showing how great it was for a family to be together. It all came together to make The Cosby Show an unstoppable juggernaut. 1990, Roseanne. The Cosby Show wasn't alone as the most viewed show on TV in 1990. It also had to contend with Roseanne, another show that broke new ground in television representation. Rarely had anyone attempted a show about a blue-collar Midwestern family with two working parents, but Roseanne was also the anti-Cosby Show, built around a family with financial struggles, messy lives, and real-world problems that never resolved at the end of an episode. Through it all, they still managed to stay a close-knit family. It was such an indelible portrait of this particular kind of American family that ABC revived Roseanne for a short-lived 2018 run, more than 20 years after it initially went off the air. 1991, Cheers. Cheers was so different from other contemporary sitcoms when it debuted in 1982, it was nearly canceled, before taking home some Emmys in 1983. By 1989, everyone was invested in what became the nation's favorite neighborhood bar and the cast of characters who frequented it.
Good afternoon, everybody.
It was so popular, in fact, that it led to the also successful spin-off Frasier, launched the career of Woody Harrelson, and gets a shout-out in scores of pop culture references. 1995 and 1998, Seinfeld. Finally, after years of shows about things, along came a show about nothing. Except that Seinfeld was about something, the hilariously dark and selfish impulses of some nasty New Yorkers. Based on Jerry Seinfeld's scattered observational comedy, it turned into one of the most intricately written and inventive sitcoms ever made. It also upended the traditional sitcom formula by featuring bizarre classic moments, like ordering from the soup Nazi and messing up an operation by dropping a junior mint. Americans loved the cleverly written storylines that somehow all connected at the end, and it beat everything else on the air. 1996 to 1997 and 1999, ER. The fast-paced, ultra-realistic drama ER marked another shift in viewer tastes. Breaking up the life-and-death tension of a big-city emergency room were scenes involving the doctors' personal lives, moments that were just as captivating thanks to stars like George Clooney, Juliana Margulies, and Noah Wyle. ER was a mainstay of NBC's schedule for 15 seasons, and at times, it was the most watched show on TV.